Hello everyone, and thank you so much for coming back to my YouTube channel, Supreme Comics Girl. And if you're new, welcome to the Crazy House. Well, not the Crazy House. Tonight I'm actually in my parents' wooden shed. And trust me, I know there's a lot of drink behind me, but I'm not an alcoholic. I promise. Don't be worrying, right? But I'm in my dad's and my mum's wooden shed, and yes, that is cold air coming out of my mouth. I am heck to the freaking well freezing. Nearly fell outside on the ice because I forgot that my dad told me on the way up that it was really icy outside. But anyways, we are going to be talking about the 2020 movie this year that came out called The Witches. And the actors that it involved was Anne Hathaway. She was the head witch, the Grand High Witch, sorry. And I'm not going to be editing this video, I'm just going to do it pure raw. Like, that's how cool I am, right? Not even going to do any editing. So if I bugger up, I bugger up. So she was the Grand High Witch. And we also had Octavia Spencer. I hope I have pronounced that right. She was the best in this. She was my favourite. She was really fun, really bubbly, really an easy, warm character and really easy to take to. And then, oh my gosh, I am so sorry, I forget the name of the young little kid actor, but he played a character called Bruno. And he was basically narrating his character, and his character was narrated by the awesome funny comedian Chris Rock. And Chris Rock basically narrated throughout this entire movie, The Witches. Now, I will say straight off the bat, I would give this movie like a 6.5 or possibly a 7 out of 10 because I really enjoyed it. What I really loved about it was that it kept just the story, and it didn't heavily smash us in the face with a crap ton of CGI. This movie was directed by Robert Zemeckis. I hope I pronounced that right. He did the likes of Back to the Future, The Polar Express, which I watch every single year on Christmas Eve night when my turkey's being cooked without fail. It's like one of it's probably my second or third all-time favorite Christmas movie of all time. So you know he's good. And this was also produced by Guillermo del Toro. Now, I don't know who done the visuals, but what I would say is with the visuals when Anne Hathaway turned into like the Grand Witch, her face, there was two lines here where her mouth was, where she smiled. Now, you could sort of see the lines that were there, but she covered it up with makeup to make herself look normal and everything. Like, if you've seen the trailer, she looks beautiful, she looks normal. But then when she turns into a witch, she's totally different, and they take off their wigs and everything, and it just opened up halfway her face, and then you could see all her like witch teeth and everything. I think the visuals, they could have spent more time on that, if you know what I mean, guys. And as well, I'll be honest, if you have a young child, I wouldn't recommend that they watch this because Anne Hathaway kind of freaked me out a bit. So there is like a couple of scenes where when she does turn into the Grand Witch, where it's pretty freaky dicky, like, not even gonna lie, guys, just straight up trying to tell you my honest opinion. And then there was a part with her arms where she was like going through and her arms got longer and bigger. It looked cool, but I think they could have spent a bit more time to brush up and polish up on the visuals. Although I did love that they concentrated on the story, so hats off to that, and that they didn't go crazy with the CGI. It wasn't to the point where it was bothering me. At the end of the day, this is based on a book by Roald Dahl, who's insanely obviously, but we've got The Big Friendly Giant, all these other movies. But it is what it is. We're getting a movie from a book, do you know what I mean, based off a book. It's not like going to be DC, Aquaman, CGI budget, do you know what I mean? I was very happy with the movie overall. I was happy enough with the visuals. I just think, as I say, they could have worked a wee bit more on the CGI. Now, to get to the story, basically it's based in 1968, and as I say, narrated by Chris Rock, and it's in Chicago actually. And a couple of my friends in America have been making me feel jealous and sending me videos of their snow, and I'm so angry because they still haven't sent any of it to me yet. Might have to fall out with them, might have to have a few words, guys. But anyhow, and there's a car accident, and he ends up upside down. This little kid called Bruno, he's very young. I would say he would be around, they didn't explain it, I don't think, around maybe 8 to 10 years of age. I'm not good at telling ages, but yeah. And he was upside down in the car, and sadly the parents passed away. He survived. He was taken out of the car, and he was obviously very quiet for a while. He didn't want to speak. He was gutted, upset, hurt, heartbroken, lost. And his grandmother, who's Octavia Spencer, is this awesome, warm, bubbly character comes along, and to cheer him up, she puts on her, like her, old school retro vinyl records. Yes, I was about in those times. I'm an 80s baby. Friggin' playing Kylie Minogue and everything in my mum and dad's caravan. The vinyl records. And she's putting on these really cool, old school retro songs. And that was the thing about it. There was like three, like, we are family. I got all my sisters and me, right? All those types of songs, right? Get up, everybody, dance. Those types of songs. They had like three old school songs in there, which I was loving. So music was great. And they focused on the story. They really, really, really did. And her and the kid together were fantastic. And basically what happens is the kid goes into a store to buy something, and he sees this like freaky lady, and she's this big hat and everything on, and she tries to lure him in, and she brings out this like obviously CGI snake. Now at the beginning that was the first time we saw CGI, but up until really like midway through they didn't really use CGI again. So this is what I'm saying. I loved the first half of the movie the most because it was just real story based and real getting into the swing of things, and basically what happened was after he seen her at the store, he explained her to the grandmother, and she was like, did she look like this? Did she look like that? Oh my gosh, that's a witch. And she knew straight away because when she was a young girl, she seen Anne Hathaway at the time, who's playing the Grand Witch, with her friend was over talking to her, and she handed her this pink lollipop, and she ran away. But her friend the next day started to change and started to turn, and she turned into a chicken. So she knew all about this, and she knows that once a witch comes into your life, they never go away. So they then leave straight away, and the granny like has all this like stuff like potions and all, like, to try and like take away bad vibes like that and stuff. So she's really cool. She has a lot to her character in this. She's obviously read up a lot about witchery and witchcraft and stuff like that. So that's really, I love that about her character. She was very knowledgeable, and funny too. She had like a real funny side to her as well. So they then go and stay in this hotel, and there's this little English kid. And I forgot to mention that the granny bought the little kid Bruno, her grandson, this pet mouse, and called it Daisy. And I'll get to that in a bit though. But basically in the hotel they didn't realise that Anne Hathaway freaking well turns up with tons and tons of witches behind her, including the one that the wee Bruno seen in the store. And they hire out this big massive conference room because this is where they have their little witchcraft conferences, right? So the kid ended up in that room, and he had his little baby mouse called Daisy in his little pocket, and he's seen everything. They had this witch meeting. They take off their hair, and all their heads are bald, and they take off their gloves, and these weird. And this is where I think they could have fixed the CGI, because what they done really amazing was Anne Hathaway's dress. She had this gorgeous, stunning dress on, right? And I just thought that it was just a design round her dress at first, but then I realised, class, that's actually a gold snake. It was a golden snake, guys, like bright, like rose gold. Rose gold's like one of my new favourite colours now, next to purple, and it was wrapped around, it went the whole way around, and then it started moving, and then it was like moving around her neck, and then like moving down round where her feet are. And this is where I think they could have improved the visuals, because it was kind of cool, she was kind of floating up in the air, but her fingers were kind of like that, so there's like a gap there, and I just don't think it looked overly realistic. I think they could have did it better, but I did think it was really cool. Anne Hathaway really was fantastic in this role. She was brilliant. She was the antagonist, obviously, of this movie, but I do feel like the movie could have been a wee bit longer, and I do feel that she could have been focused on a bit more, because she wasn't in it as much. Like the granny was in it the most, which I didn't mind because I loved her character, and she was my favourite character in it. But I just feel like we could have been given more of her story, because she was the grand witch, high witch after all. And I feel that the movie could have ran on for an extra 15-20 minutes. The pacing was perfect, actually, I have to say, because I really loved the whole storytelling up until they got to the hotel and we seen all the witches and everything. But what I would say is I feel that the movie could have easily have been an extra 15-20 minutes longer, and I would have enjoyed it, and we could have seen more of Anne Hathaway, because she really was fantastic, and she really did scare me, actually, and she made me believe like that she was this really horrible, evil, grand witch. But basically, the little grandson ends up getting turned. She finds out that he's in that conference room and turns him into a mouse, and then the little this little English kid gets turned into a mouse as well, because he was told to meet her there at a certain time, you know, for all these bars of chocolates. And that's how they lure them in. They lure them in with like golden bars of chocolate, or like a pink candy lolly or something along them lines. I know in America you call it candy, sweets, candy, chocolate bars and everything is all candy. But yeah, that's how they lure them in. And so then his mouse obviously was a mouse, as we knew. But what we didn't know was that mouse could actually speak. And it turns out that his mouse Daisy, that his grandmother got him, she was turned into, she was actually a young girl in school, and she was turned into a mouse by one of the witches. And then you had the grandson turned into a mouse. And then you also had that little English kid that was staying in the hotel turned into a mouse. Now, what basically happened was they went and got one of the potions, and they tried a spell. The grandmother, you know, 'cause she's very knowledgeable in witchcraft, and they weren't able to complete the spell. They didn't have enough potion. But then finally they did, and then they were able to turn the Grand High Witch into a mouse. But she didn't turn into a mouse, she turned into this like horrible rat rodent, and it was hilarious. And they put like a bucket over her, and she had this cat, this black cat, and it was like wanting to go for her to eat her. It was hilarious because she had him as her kind of like friend pet kind of type thing, and that was absolutely hilarious. So they ended up being able to go and get a whole crap ton of potion, and they were able to turn all the witches basically into mice. But not only that, the grandmother found this big book, and within this big book was basically the book of all the witches over the globe, basically all over the world. So what they want to do is they want to go and use these potions and basically role reverse, you know, like they've been going around and wanting to wipe out all the children and turn them into mice. So they're like, well, we'll turn them into mice, like a kind of like frig you, ha ha type thing. Now, I know that there was an old movie of this made, The Witches, and I've always wanted to watch it. You can let me know if it's any good down below. But I've only ever seen it if I'm flicking by the channels, and I've never had the chance to sort of sit down and watch it. So I don't know how similar-esque this is to that. I don't know how similar-esque or reminiscent this is of the Roald Dahl book, because I haven't read it. This is the only thing of The Witches that I have actually watched, and I was thoroughly enjoyed. Pacing was fine, story was fantastic. Visuals were actually really cool. There was a point where she was telling him stories about the witches in the hotel, and up on the glass ceiling where the window was, there was lightning, and it was all stormy and everything. I loved it. And anytime she said something like, say, hand or claw, the lightning turned into like a claw and looked almost like 3D, like coming toward him. So like things like that, really, really cool. And I absolutely thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I would highly recommend it if you're into a good story. Doesn't shove you with CGI to hide how bad a storyline is or hide how bad a plot is. Now, the ending I don't really know about, because the ending, it kind of sounded like they're going to be doing a sequel, and I don't know that we need that, and I didn't feel that we needed that. But I would have to see a trailer before I would say anything negative. But it sounded that way because in the end credit, it sort of said that they're going to go around all the witches pretty much and turn them into mice, and had that as an end credit. However, what I will say also is I don't know what it's like in the book, but I would have preferred at the end they just weren't able to become human, so they just stayed as mice, and the three of them were happy enough to stay as mice. But I don't know if I like that. Also, the mouse Daisy was voiced by Kristin Chenoweth. I love her. I absolutely love her, and she's in the movie Four Christmases, and she also voices one of the fairies, Rosetta, from the Tinkerbell movies. And oh my gosh, I love Kristin Chenoweth. I love her, and if there was ever a live Tinkerbell, I would love her to play Tinkerbell. Her accent, she's like, well, where are we gonna go, guys, and all this here, absolutely hilarious. I love her. So yes, overall I would give this movie like a 6 or 6.5 out of 10, because or sorry, a 6.5 or a 7, sorry, should I say. Yeah, probably a 7 out of 10, because I thoroughly enjoyed it. So thank you so much for watching, guys, and I will see you all next time. Bye.